So please, welcome.
Thank you. And I will talk about what potential we have for forest-based biofuels, and in also regarding to the sustainable biofuels in the sustainable biomass and what we can do and not can do. But to understand the forest-based biofuels and what we can do and how the potential for growing new business, you have to understand the forest industry as well. And if we look back the forest industry and the forest industry in Sweden and the forest industry in general, but I will focus on the forest industry within Sweden. And right now, people think that the forest industry might be really important for the future. And everyone is aware that the forest industry has been really important in the past as well. But some people are not aware that the forest industry today is really important as well for Sweden as a country. If we look back, the forest industry started to be an industry in the 16th century, where we started with before that we used wood for heat, more or less. Then we started with the sawmills, and there was a first industrial revolution of the forest industry. The second came in the 19th century, where we took these pulp woods, which was not able to use for other things than heating, to start to produce pulp. And now we're ahead of the third industrial change of the forest industry, where we'll take what we today only can use for heat and want to transform it into either biofuel or chemicals or materials. But we do this exactly as what we have done before. We take the residues or the part of the wood that just have been used for heat and use it for some bigger purpose. The forest industry in Sweden is the biggest net export value in Sweden. Every fifth crown spent in industrial investments right now is actually going into the forest industry. This is something that we also have to bear in mind, that we are right now investing quite heavily, and everything we will do in the future, it will conquer with the other investments we can do for products and for other things. If we look at our SÖDRA, we have a turnover of 24 billion Swedish crowns. And what's different from us, from all other companies, is that we are owned by 52,000 members. So to be an owner of SÖDRA, you have to own forest. This is quite an advantage for us working with innovation at SÖDRA, since our owners are really long-term perspective. It's generations of owning a SÖDRA, which give us a great favor of thinking really long-term. We have 3 pulp mills and 7 sawmills, and we had a wood volume of 16.5 million square meters. It's quite hard to understand how much 16.5 million square meters is. But every day there are 1,200 trucks coming in with wood to our industries. And we also have vessels and trains above that. For us in the forest industry, we see when people are discussing this, shall we use the wood for fuel? Shall we use it for paper? Or shall we just use it for buildings? And we see very big demands of every of these sectors that want to be more sustainable, and they want to have the wood as their solution. The best thing with wood is that we can do all these at the same time. Because if you build a house, you will not conquer with aviation fuels. You will get more aviation fuels, since we use different parts of the trees for all these applications. And this is very important to bear in mind when we look at if there are enough biomass to produce biofuels. if we looked into advanced biofuels, we see that this gonna have a really great impact in the future. This is a EEI, and what they said is that actually where we can grow, it's on the advanced, and it's what's called advanced part A in the Renewable Energy Directive. It's wood-based, it's other residues, and but it's residues from forest industry and other type of industries. And we see, even though we will have a great rush of the electricity or the electrification, we will still see big growth for biofuels. So we see that this is something we have to be aware of. The problem is not actually if there will be any demand or not, because the demand will really come for advanced biofuels. It's more how do we make the change to start to actually produce. And now we are into what is actually forest-based biofuels. And this picture is, I'm sorry, it's in Swedish, since it's a really good picture that I've stolen from ÅF Pöyry. And because of that, it's not translated. But what we're looking into, it's not, as I said, pure wood. It's residues from the pulp mills, and it's residues from the sawmills, and it's harvest residues. And if we look on the different streams, we are looking at all these different streams, but there are actually 3 streams that are providing volumes. The others, as we have today, tall oil, we produce today tall oil diesel in Sampine. It's quite small volumes. We have methanol, I will come back to that, which are also small volumes. So to get volumes, we have to use the black liquor, either direct or via lignin, and we have to use residues from the sawmills and residues from the forest. And then there is next challenge for us. Then we have to decide which technology we use. And everyone looking in today to making advanced biofuels is looking on more or less different technologies. And this picture is very much easier than the real world, because there are a lot of different types of pyrolysis, for example. And then we can decide if we want to go to biodiesel, biogasoline, biogas, biodME, biomethanol, or bioethanol. And here, this is technology question, but this is actually more or less the policies, because the market will go where the policies is. And today, more or less all policies are here, biodiesel and biogasoline. This is the low risk. It's quite hard to go to anything that is not able to blend into in the diesel pool or the gasoline pool. Because of that, we get all investments and all development in this. For SÖDRA, we are having 3 different paths right now. We have Sampine, which is a company found that we have together with Preem and Sveaskog and Lauter. It was founded about 10 years ago and had produced tall oil diesel for almost 10 years. And right now we're building up it out from 100,000 tons to 150,000 tons. This is a wonderful product, but the problem is that the resource of tall oil is more or less, there's no more tall oil, so we can't rebuild this more than we're doing. We will, in just short time, we'll probably, in the end of this year, open the world's first biomethanol plant in Mönsterås. And this is, if Sampine is small volume, this is really small volume. But the good thing with this is what we do today with the methanol is that we burn it to get electricity. So when we burn the methanol, we get electricity and we get CO2. And then you might think that methanol, electricity, and CO2, I have heard of this combination before. And this is what people look into when they look into electric fuels. But they do the other way around. They take the CO2, the electricity, and get methanol. The forest industry today are doing the opposite, that we have methanol to get electricity. So what we are doing here is actually a reverse electrofuels. And when we go out and take this carbon, we take it before it's went into CO2, then it's 16 times more efficient than if we have started to produce electricity first and collect it again. So, and then we also have the Silva Green Fuel, and this is our volume project. We are right now building a demo plant in Tofte in Norway, together with Statkraft, the Norwegian energy company. And here we look into solid biomass and to make some biocrude biodiesel out of solid biomass. And to talk about sustainable biomass and how much sustainable biomass we have, then I have a picture here from the next speaker, actually, but stolen or borrowed with her acceptance. And we have looked into where in Sweden, or Elizabeth has looked into where in Sweden is the best place to have a facility. Since everyone in Sweden will automatically answer the north of Sweden, because there is very much forest in the north of Sweden. But when we started looking at this, we see that actually north of Sweden, yeah, there are a lot of forest. But we don't have that much of the industry. We have really much sawmills, for example, here in our regions where we are. And we also have much harvest residue. Of course, we have more that use both pellet production and district heating here in the south of Sweden. But when we summarize everything, actually we see that this part where we are is the most favorable part in Sweden. And this is when you added things like harbors and industrial facilities, it's even better than this inside part of Norrland. So we think that this is a great advantage for us as SÖDRA, that we have this position where we actually have every second tree in this region where we see is the best region in Sweden. Because of that, this is so important for us, and it's so important for us to look into advanced biofuels and try to be a leader in this. And I also have a question to answer. Is there enough feedstock? Is there enough feedstock to produce advanced biofuels? And I think we have discussed this topic too much now. Because if we look on this, here we have what I will say available feedstock. It's hard to say how much available feedstock there really are. But I have here we have, like, I think 2030 we can produce, for example, 3 million tons of biofuels. The Swedish quota system, if we change like everything in Sweden, or biofuels in Sweden, or fuel in Sweden to biofuels, and we have some electrification and things like that, we will end up in approximately the same. If we look in the EU, Annex 9, Part A, and double counter, yeah, we will have twice as much as we can produce in Sweden. But then we have got pretty many other countries in the EU that will also be able to fulfill this. So I will say the feedstock is definitely not the problem. If we instead look on this, which is the planned capacity within Sweden, the planned capacity in advanced biofuel. Today we have one factory producing biodiesel in Sweden from Annex 9 Part A. It's Sunpine. They produce 100,000 tons a year. They will rebuild and produce 150,000 tons. But still, even though we look into for Silva, we have other companies looking into different technology. We have actually no other planned capacity during this time. And we see we have a great mismatch here. You see this small up to this. So we shall not discuss in how much feedstock do we have, because the feedstock will not be the bottleneck 2030. It will not be the bottleneck 2040 either. So we have to discuss instead, how do we can start to use all the feedstock that we actually have, instead of being afraid of using too much. And then why don't we use it? Why don't we use it today? Why are we not taking these steps, since we have these governmental policies, we have this demand, we have the customer demand, we know the technologies, and the problem is, it's back to what I talked about, the 3 steps of the forest industrialization. The first steps, when we built sawmills, it was high feedstock cost. A sawmill have a really high feedstock, the sawn timber, but it's really low capital costs. So if you have a sawmill and the market is going down, then you can close your sawmill for quite a long time. And when the market is going up, yeah, you can start again, more or less. If we look into pulp mill, we have a bit opposite. We have quite high amount is of the cost is the capital cost, and we have a much lower feedstock cost. But for the biorefinery, we are aiming for the lowest hanging fruits, so to say, on cost. So we will have really low feedstock cost, but we have high capital cost. And in the meantime, we compete with these HVOs that actually are somewhere here in the middle. And when someone at the board shall take a decision on, to invest, then we see the risk is going much, much higher here. A biorefinery has to produce all the time, since the capital costs are ticking all the time. Also, then we have, for today, both the technical risk, there is no one producing this, so the first factory that will be built will be the most expensive and the most inefficient. And then we also have these political risks and the market risks and other things. So the risk of take the decision to build a first biorefinery is really, really high. And here we have to have some plans, some strategies, not just creating demand for biofuels, but also creating production, and creating production both in Sweden and the EU. And I know there are many things going on both in the EU and in national levels. So this is the most important to start to use all of the sustainable feedstock that we actually have here in this country and in other countries in Europe. And by that I see Paul is standing up, so I will say the future is made of trees.
Okay, thank you, Henrik. I have one question before we let in